Are you ready?
Let's go.
Now circling in the neutral zone.
Here's the pitch on the way. 36 yards for the win.
This.
Here comes a big chance. The shot.
Is
this the dagger?
The neutral zone.
Home run. Good.
This is as good as it gets.
Now, here's your host, two-time Paralympian, Brock Richardson.
What's going on? It's time for another edition of The Neutral Zone. I am indeed your host, Brock Richardson. I had the opportunity to sit down and speak with Chief Executive Officer of the Canadian Paralympic Committee, Karen O'Neill, who tells us about the preparations for Milano Cortina 2026. We will discuss the interview a little bit and talk just a titch more about Penny Oleksiak, because we all sort of saw the bits of the interview that she did, and I know I have more to say on this, and I'm sure my panel does as well. Let's do things a little bit differently. I'm joined by Claire and Josh, but instead of getting into our headlines this week, I wanted to, because this is our last episode for the year, we'll be back on Tuesday, January 6th after today's episode, but because this is our last episode for the year, I decided let's do something we've not done before that I can remember and talk about some of the great sports stories of 2025. So let's start with Josh. Josh, what do you have for great sports stories of 2025?
Well, in an effort that probably shocks no one, the highlight for me of this year was watching our Blue Jays go from almost last year to appearing in the World Series this year. When the year started, I don't think any of us would have predicted that the Blue Jays would be challenging for a World Series, but through a series of interesting moves and some probably good luck, we'll just call a spade, they ended up basically one game, one pitch away from a World Series title. And it was an incredible roller coaster and really, really enjoyable to watch. I haven't been glued to baseball like that in a very long time. And if Mark Shapiro happens to hear this interview, then keep doing what you're doing, and I'm not going to accept any excuses of we can't get good players, because we've proven that we can.
Agreed. Claire, what do you have for us for good sports stories of the year? You have a couple, so we're going to hear from you twice in this iteration of our headlines.
Yeah, I am going to go back to April, so much earlier in the year. And when Ovechkin beat Gretzky's scoring title, and again, similar to the Blue Jays, he came into that season injured right off the bat, and really people doubted that he would even break that record that season. And even with, I think he was out 7-8 weeks, came back and not only beat the record but scored 51 goals and still playing, still adding to that record right now.
Yeah, it was a record that I told somebody on a different network a couple of years ago. I said, I don't think that's going to be broken, and thank goodness I no longer have the opportunity to appear on that program, because I'd have to eat crow, which I would have happily done, but I don't like eating crow. It doesn't always taste good. So I give credit where credit is due for Ovechkin and what he did, but I, for one, 2.5 years ago, did not think we would be having this discussion. So I agree with both of your first choices for stories of the year. Mine goes back to the summer, and we didn't start hearing about this person till, say, the round of 32 in the National Bank Open. She came in as an 18-year-old wild card, and then went on to win the National Bank Open. And I'm talking about Victoria Mboko, who really, as I said, nobody knew who she was. 18-year-old. She would always talk about the fact that she would be on the practice courts in the first couple of rounds, and nobody would be around. And as she got closer and closer to the final, many people were around, and many fans wanted autographs. And I think Victoria endeared herself to Canadians, and that for me deserves a story of the year. For myself, because I'm a big tennis guy and I love it, and I got the opportunity to meet Victoria when I did Family Feud Canada this summer, and it was really cool. I met her for like all of 45 seconds, took a picture. It was cool. But yeah, I just think that that's a cool sports story of the year to put on the docket. Claire, you've got one more for us, so hit me with another one.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up that moment in sports and tennis before I go to my last one. Events like that just bring more people into the sport and more Canadians playing the sport. So something like that is just going to bring more girls into tennis and continue to be a powerhouse in the sport. And I mean, I can't not cover 2025 sports events without including the first ever Women's Para Hockey World Championships. And that is another event that we just hope and know that not only brings more exposure to the sport itself, but puts more girls in the sport and growing it. So I think it'd be silly for me not to include that special event that we had this year.
Claire, I give you a ton of kudos because you just hit the mandate of our podcast totally. You put in a para sports historical yearly moment, and I credit you for that. Thank you very much for bringing that up as well, because you're right. It was a historic moment and you were a part of that. So very, very cool. Those are what we have for our stories of the year for 2025, and we'll see where we are in 2026, but I'm sure there'll be many other stories we will be able to bring up then. If you want to get a hold of us on social media and tell us what you would have put in there, then get a hold of us, and here's how you can do that.
And welcome back to the Neutral Zone broadcast booth.
Play ball!
We're set to get this bowl game underway. The first pitch is brought to you by Brock Richardson's X account at Neutral Zone BR. First pitch and a strike. Hey, gang, why not strike up a chat with Claire Buchanan from the Neutral Zone? Find her on X at Neutral Zone CB. There's a swing of the chopper out to second base, right at Claire as she picks up the ball, throws it over to the first base for a routine play.
Out.
And fans, there's nothing routine about connecting with Cam and Josh from the Neutral Zone at Neutral Zone Cam J and at J Watson 200. Now that's a winning combination.
I am truly very excited to be joined once again by Chief Executive Officer of the Canadian Paralympic Committee, Karen O'Neill. She's here today to tell us about the Canadian Paralympic Committee's involvement and preparation into Milano Cortina 2026 in March. Karen, so nice to have you on board again.
Always a pleasure, Brock, and I always look forward to our chats. Thanks very much for having me on today.
I always look forward to them as well. And today we're doing it one-on-one, which is kind of different. Normally we have a few other people, but today it's just you and I. So looking forward to it.
Good.
Let's talk about, up to this point, what has been involved for the Canadian Paralympic Committee in getting ready for the preparations of 2026 coming ever so close.
Yeah, well, first, ensuring that the 6 sports have what they need. So a lot of details to ensure that everything from travel, uniform kits, sport med and science, training and competition leading up to the games, and also what they need at the games, that they're all really well known and mapped out well in advance. A lot of people think that the planning for the games might start few months beforehand, but in fact, getting ready for games, not only these games, but any sets of games that we support Team Canada, it's really years in the making. In fact, I think our teams start working on it's probably 5, 6, and even 7 years prior to the games dates. And if you add on the layering of the games, for instance, our team is working on not only Milano Cortina, but it'll also be looking at Los Angeles in 2028, our Para-Pan Ams in 2027, and soon Brisbane in 2032. That's what we're focused on right now, but those are the key items that we're focused on.
It's interesting to learn how far in advance you really are looking beyond just what's in the window. I mean, it makes sense that you're looking into, Para-Pan Am games coming up soon, but to hear that you're looking into 32 already, wow, that's fascinating. What still needs to be accomplished if we look at Milano between now and opening ceremonies?
Well, let's be really specific, because at the time that we're speaking today, Brock, it's about 85 days from now until opening ceremonies. So all of the big things have been taken care of. And in fact, our team was working with the team over in Milano Cortina just a couple days ago to go through the extended long list, because we still haven't confirmed the final team members. We're looking at the final confirmation of all our team announcements. We just announced the para curling team in Toronto about 2 weeks ago. It was a great opportunity to celebrate the athletes that have been selected. And we're going to be looking at the remaining 5 sports in the team announcements. It'll probably take us up till about the end of February. And last but not least, I'm going to say any last moment needs and requirements. If it's extending a camp, if it's a piece of equipment or a dietary need. It's really paying attention to that 1% at this time, Brock. What small details can we pay attention to that'll really have maximum impact?
Yeah, it's funny that we're doing this now, because I was thinking as I was preparing for this, I don't think we've had Karen on for a Winter Paralympic Games, which means that this kind of comes from this question of what differs between a Summer Games and a Winter Games in regards to the preparation, if anything at all.
That's a great question. At a detailed logistics level, Brock, I would say not a whole lot. Like from an operational standpoint, it's really, really similar in terms of what we pay attention to. And I would say the level of detail and operational requirements for the games are pretty much the same, but it's probably scope and scale. That's probably the biggest thing I would say. Our team sizes for summer and winter, summer is usually about 2 to 2.5 times larger than our Winter Games. And I'd also say when you get on the international stage, whereas a Winter Games is probably about 600 athletes in total, and in summer, it's probably, I think it's about 4,600. So you can see scope and scale of just the event. But I would say the one big difference for winter is the equipment. Every single sport has equipment, and lots of it. Not just one set of skis. It's many kinds of skis and backups. It's guns. It's for biathlon. It's extra para sledges, para ice hockey, sledge chairs for hockey. So when I think of winter, swimming, many of the athletics, goalball, there are many sports that don't have any equipment, whereas in winter, every single sport has equipment, and lots of it.
Yeah, for sure. I was lucky enough to play in a summer sport, and it was not a lot to have to bring for the court purposes. But thinking of winter, I'm so glad I got involved in a summer sport. I would prefer to play in the hot weather than not, to be honest with you. Something else that's been changed on the Canadian Paralympic Committee level, in past years, the individuals who have led Team Canada have been referred to as the chef de mission, and I cannot put the French accent on that, so we'll just leave that there. But this year, we are going to co-captains. Can you explain the rationale behind the change in names, at least for these games?
Yeah, I sure can. And you're right. And it's a good question, because it is a change, and a pretty significant change, actually. Historically, we've always had a chef de mission, and you said it perfectly. And typically, it's been a retired Paralympian, and we've had some absolutely amazing chef de missions up to this point. But what I would say is the role of the chef de mission when we get to games is highly logistical. You're going to chef meetings every morning. You're dealing with operational issues. You have an appropriate accreditation that allows you to get into access to deal with many of these operational issues. That is your role at the games. So typically it's been both the operational issues and, let me say, spokespeople. And what we found was, because the demands in both areas were becoming so large, and also what we found internationally, the move was for many of the senior sport leads, and in our case, the senior sport officer, would play the role of being senior operationals individual well before the games, and they would continue that role into the games, and on the international front, typically be allocated the chef de mission status. So having seen all of that, and also seeing that the demands were so great on our chef de missions who have been Paralympians, thought for a continuity for the operations to look at one of our senior staff leads, in this case heading into Milano Cortina, an exceptional individual, Catherine Gosselin-Després, who's been our chief sport officers now, I think it's about 12 years. And so she'll play the operational role. And then what we've done is establish the captain and co-leads. So our captain is Mac Marcoux. Many people are going to recognize Mac from his well-decorated alpine career. And then embedded in the team, many of the leaders within each of the sports. So that way, a real-time athlete's perspective on items or perspectives, or sharing a little bit about the experience real time at the games, will be closer to where it counts for active athletes engaged during the game. So a little bit of a beta test, as I said, but we're pretty excited about it because we think it's going to support the athletes to focus on and do what they do best, in addition to sharing their story, experience, and speaking on the areas and issues that count. And from a chef standpoint, really be intentional about what that role is and what some of the demands are on the role.
So I guess for me, a follow-up question in this, and I'm sure you'll shed the light on it, but there are some athletes who are competing as well as having this co-captain tag as well. Do you have any sort of fear, I guess I could say, in the whole distraction of being a co-captain, or do you really feel that it's going to be advantageous to do it this way?
Oh, you must have been in some of our meetings, Brock, as we debated the pros and cons on this one. One of the reasons we have Mac as the lead is because he is retired, but he's also close enough to the experience of having competed. He understands the games, knows the games, and is really current. So his focus is going to be on ongoing representation, lead, and support when required. The idea of some of the co-leads, but embedded within the team, is for that other role. And that's around leadership. That's around mentorship. And so that's why many of the athletes that are competing and named as a co-lead, primary number one, competition and focus is without question the number one priority that we always pay attention to. But when there's some ebbs and flows that they can speak more publicly on their experience to date, great. We'll work with the sport to make sure it doesn't hamper or distract, and it's a good opportunity to be able to speak with, let's say, external media, but also within the team to look at their leadership and mentorship. Many of the athletes that have been established as kind of the co-leads also have some pretty significant experience, and the athletes look to many of these athlete leaders as many enter the games for the first time.
Now, I may be asking you to think a little bit further in advance, but do you feel now that this is going to be a method that you're going to move forward into a summer games? Or is this whoa, Brock, let me see what happens in Milano before I come and publicly say we're going to do this way or that way moving forward?
You know what? It's a little bit of both, Brock. I think we recognized it just was too demanding and it didn't fit for what the requirements were right now. one of the things we're really committed to, if it's not working, let's figure out a new way to look at it. So I would say, to kind of in your first comment there, the first portion of your comment, we want to see how this works. And if we can honor the operational role and leadership really in a clean, intentional way and focused way, that'd be great. And if we can start looking at some of the athletes within competitive context, that they're able to have voice, also some leadership, share their experience, but also contribute to their longer term journey of evolving leadership. I'm going to say that if it works, it will definitely be a strong consideration for how we look at this going in the future, which would imply possibly the Parapan Games and then the Summer Games in LA.
Yes, for sure. If we look at this from a, you lead the charge at the Canadian Paralympic Committee, what intrigues you when you hear Milano Cortina is hosting the games? Like, when you heard this a number of years ago, what did you stop and go, I can't wait to come here because of A, B, and C reason?
Well, I think first off, it's a winter nation. And it's a strong winter nation that hosted in Torino 20 years ago. So it's a winter nation. They know how to host, and they have a lot of the facilities and infrastructure already. So that's very exciting, because some of the last winter games, perhaps there hasn't been as such a dominant focus on the games host as a winter nation. So by the time we arrive for the Paralympics, it's always in March, closer to some of the winter climate and infrastructure might not be so winter anymore. So strong winter nation, knows hosting, and building upon the Torino Games 20 years ago. I think it's a spectacular backdrop. I mean, it's one of the most picturesque nations or locations. I think that, as I mentioned, the snow conditions, the snow and outdoor conditions, because I think I'm trying to remember back to some of the other sites we've had over the last 2 or 3, I think this would probably be the most dominant winter infrastructure ongoing versus a winter infrastructure just set up for the games. So pretty excited about it.
Right. And of course, there's always the things that maybe concern us going to games. I know for me, when I went to Guadalajara, it was the just different things that were around there. We had a lot of security because of risk in that regard. Are there any concerns for you going into Milano at all?
Well, I would say not only Milano, but all games, Brock. Our job is not only to organize the games, but it's to also understand and scope out any risk and be able to build mitigation. So ultimately, we always look at how do we ensure an environment that really supports a healthy culture of excellence. As I mentioned earlier, that starts years ago with many of our members on what those needs are. So that's the first thing, that we want to make sure that that competitive environment is able to be produced throughout the whole set of games. You mentioned in your comment about some of your own experiences, and definitely I would say safety and security is paramount. Whereas I thought it might have been, for maybe 1 or 2 sets of games, I think with what's going on the world stage right now, whether it be local security and or more geopolitical impact during the games, with all the things going on in the world, that's a major piece right now. In fact, I was reflecting upon that with some colleagues the other day about how most of our focus in prior games is always on, kit, uniforms, transportation, food. But now it truly is a large chunk of our work is working with Sport Canada, with Global Affairs Canada, with our own safety and security to make plans to ensure that our team is well taken care of, safe and secure. I think the last thing is just the way the games are set up actually this time, Brock, just the sheer distances. So for some of your listeners who might not know what's going on with the Paralympics, we are going to be in 3 different sites. So we're going to be Milano with hockey, we're going to be Cortina with alpine and snowboard, and then we're going to be at Val des Femmes for Nordic and biathlon. these are really long distances away, 5 hours, 7 hours. And so typically we've always had one central athlete village, and then you would go out for competition during the day to come back. There's always been exceptions, let's say a cycling or let's say a Nordic for winter. But in this, it truly, right from the get-go, is going to be satellite villages. The teams, both athletes and our own mission staff and support staff, are going to be in those villages for the duration. So that's a bit of a different model. I'm going to say we've always enjoyed ease of access and speed. So we're also planning for just the impact of sheer distances between these 3 satellite villages now.
Very much so. And when you're going from one to the other, you really have to plan, okay, I'm going on this drive to do A, B, and C. It's not so much I'm going to jump over to go and see, skiing or whatever. It's a thought out plan of, I have to go and do this. So yeah, this is interesting. And Karen, there's nothing better as an athlete to be part of a village and to be part of, the whole committee. So it's a bit of a different spin to do it this way.
Well, Brock, if I can pick up on your last point, and that's truly what we're trying to think about, because obviously the game's about competition, but it's of the whole environment and support, whether it be the experience of the village or all of the support infrastructure that's typically built around the village. So what we're trying to do is say, what are the key elements of the athlete experience, the environment, the competition environment, and needing to replicate and work with the host organizing committee to make sure that those are all replicated in those 3 satellite villages.
Canadian swimmer Penny Oleksiak has been in the news lately and will be banned for 2 years because of missing 3 whereabouts over the course of 12 months. I don't necessarily want you to comment on specifics regarding Penny, but I do want you to comment from the Canadian Paralympic Committee perspective on the importance of the whereabouts program and how you guys might be handling things slightly different now that this is kind of in the news.
Well, I'm not sure we're handling anything differently now, but what I would say, Brock, is that the whereabouts program is a critical piece of the whole Canadian anti-doping program. And I mean, the whole program is built to ensure fair competition and the integrity of sports. I think from the Canadian Paralympic Committee's perspective, it's really important that the program as a whole is honored and supported, and the whereabouts. And so for those that might not know what a whereabouts is about, or explaining it, is an athlete who is competing at the Paralympics or Olympics for that matter, provide their full schedule to the Canadian anti-doping program. And so if that means you're going to practice at 6 a.m. or 7 p.m. or, whatever you're doing, because the whole idea of some of the randomized testing is that they can show up at your training venue or your home to look for a sample. And so when you don't provide the right schedule, and or you haven't sent them news that you're revising your schedule, then that's an offense. So in your question, when you said what impact does that have on us? Well, first off, we have a continued fierce commitment to ensuring that there's fair and safe sport with integrity. The CADP, the Canadian Anti-Doping Program, is critical and a big part of clean and fair sport. And the whereabouts program and ensuring that kind of accountability is as important as participating and having a clean test. So it's really important. And I would say that oftentimes the emphasis is put on the test or the results of the test or having a clean test, whereas this might be overlooked as, let's say, a detail. And it's a pretty important detail. So I can assure you, I think most of the sports now are reinforcing how important participation in that entire program is, starting with your schedule, where you're at, and if it changes, you need to let your coach, your team, the CADP know.
Karen, I very much appreciate how you answered that question. I put it on the script and I thought, you know what, I'm going to put it out there. and I don't want specifics on the situation, but we've spent a couple of weeks, talking about bits of this and how it impacts, the Paralympic community, because I was an athlete. I've done 2 Paralympic Games. I know what this entails. So I really wanted the Canadian Paralympic Committee to come on this program and basically exercise the ability to say, no, this program is very important. So your answer means more to our audience than you probably know, because we've been banging this drum for 2-3 weeks now since this has come out. So I very much appreciate your answer on that. Is there anything else that we haven't touched on during this interview that you'd like to touch on before we wrap up?
Well, thank you for the final word, Brock. It's just a real appeal to each and every Canadian. Paralympic athletes just represent the very best of Canada: resilience, commitment, passion for sport. And just we're really incredibly proud of the team, both leading into the games and at the games. And I just really want to appeal and encourage all Canadians to join us in both watching and cheering Team Canada on in the Winter Paralympic Games. For those that don't know, so you can mark it on your calendar now, it's March 6th to 15th. If you'd like to find out any more information about the 6 sports and all the athletes competing, go to paralympic.ca. And of course, we're incredibly grateful to have the partnership with both CBC and Radio-Canada to have live coverage. And in fact, many Paralympic athletes are going to be acting as some of the hosts. So it's just a real appeal for people to join us and help celebrate some of Canada's world-class athletes on the stage in Milano Cortina in March.
I can't say it any better, so I'll just close the interview and say that is the Chief Executive Officer of the Canadian Paralympic Committee and friend of this program, Karen O'Neill, and we very much appreciate your time, and we look forward to chatting with you again down the road.
Thank you, Brock.
Claire, I do know from social media that you were busy with CBC. You and I have been sort of crossing paths over the last little while with CBC. I've been doing Family Feud this summer. I've been working with Sick Boy Podcast, who's also connected with CBC. I'm working on Price is Right Tonight right now. And that's being filmed in the CBC building. So you and I have been sort of crossing paths, but not seeing each other at any point that we've been sort of around the office. And I know that you are completing your time with this internship. I'm not sure if you're exactly done, but by post from a couple of days ago, I think you're done, if not pretty close. Can you tell the audience what you've been doing? Because the thing I saw on social media was fairly cool from what I read.
Yeah, so it's I was part of what's called the On-Air Talent Program at CBC, and CBC has a handful of initiatives these days for people with disabilities specifically to get more experience and advance their career in broadcasting. And yeah, I was fortunate enough to be one of those people that could put together a 1-hour radio holiday special alongside my producer, Samantha Louis. And we just finished it last week. It was one of those experiences that I got to see firsthand that just how much producers do, for one, but really, like, you spend every second to the last second perfecting it and making sure it sounds great. And so my project specifically, again, it's a 1-hour radio special that will be aired Boxing Day at 5 p.m. across the nation. So if you're in Toronto, it's being aired at 5. If you're in Vancouver, it's being aired at 5. So if you want to hear it earlier, you can get up and tune into a different coast here in Canada. But the project I specifically did is called The Empathy Gap. And it lended from my own experiences as someone with a disability navigating the medical field and doctor's appointments. And just saw that there was a lot of common experiences with people with disabilities that we've kind of gone away from really listening to people's experiences and who the person is before their treatment or diagnosis. And so I got to speak with other people with disabilities with similar experiences, but also people in the medical field and in lead positions in education as well that are wanting to bring back that humanity side to the experience of medical appointments and also medical school as well. And I surprisingly found that people with disabilities are intentionally getting into the medical field as well to help change this. So yeah, I could rant about this all day. I'm really excited about it. It turned out really well. Thank you for giving me the space to share about it. But yeah, I hope that it makes an impact and that it ignites a bigger conversation about how we can improve the experience between patient and doctors.
And I would even go a step further, and Josh, I'll let you weigh in as well here. I would even go a step further when you talk about people with, disabilities. Like, they experience different medical treatments as well. And I think that that's something that is a part of it too. Like, I know for me, I've faced a lot of, it's just part of your cerebral palsy. And it's like, is it, or is it actually not? And so I love what you're doing and did, and I cannot wait to hear that. I had a rookie moment when I read it, and I thought, oh, Claire's working on Boxing Day. And then I went, oh no, you dummy. It's probably pre-recorded. It's totally fine. It's all good. She's not working Boxing Day. She's probably just going to listen to the episode and bask in the glory of putting it together. Josh, do you want to weigh in before we jump back into the sports realm of things?
Absolutely. I am very excited to see what you've put together. Having been someone who grew up in Southern Ontario and who went to medical appointments at a teaching hospital, it can be a very interesting experience navigating the medical field, because every time you go for clinic, as it was called, and you see your rotation of 6 doctors, most of whom you don't remember what they do for you, you also get to see a handful of interns with each doctor, because they're a teaching hospital and those medical students are learning. And so you walk in and you get used to parroting your story, because you walk in and you don't even necessarily see the doctor. You see their team of interns, and it's like, so I know you do this every year, but can you please tell me all about yourself? And it's like, okay, so I'm this, and I have this, and I have this, and this, and this, and this, and this. And you just end up, I think, feeling, I don't even know what the word is for it, but I would say clinicized. You feel like you're a case more than a human in a lot of times. And when I was a kid, it never used to bother me, because that's just reality. That's just what it was. But now that I'm older, I realize, like, there's ways that probably could have been different. And so I'll be very interested to see what you've put together, for sure.
Yes. Congratulations on the project. And that is also part of the reason why Claire has been away from us, because she's had other opportunities right at this moment. And with the podcast where it is, I have often told my panelists, if you've got something that needs to take priority, then that's what we do. And we love doing the podcast, but sometimes got to step away because we've got to do things that are taking priority in the moment. And so we appreciate having Claire back, but it's good what you've done and doing. And I cannot wait to hear more from this either. And I hope that more comes from this, specifically from what you put together, because I know putting it together is a lot of work and you want to see some type of payoff as to what that looks like. You probably don't know as of yet, but you want to see something and maybe some change in the medical field, and that's a big thing. So good on CBC for doing yet another wonderful job in programming. I had the opportunity to speak with Karen O'Neill, who leads the Canadian Paralympic Committee and has done so since 2013. And a couple of things jumped out at me from her and my conversation. And the first piece from our conversation, and if you're following me along, I'm jumping down to discussion point 2 for my panelists. Her and I chatted about the fact that they are moving away from this idea of chef de mission, which they have done for a number of years, and they've decided now to go with captains and co-captains. The captain for this, as I just looked up, is Marc Marcoux, and then they have other athletes from other sports who are competing, including Ina Forrest, the captain for the Tyler McGregor. I was blanking for a minute and it came to me, and a few others as well that are going to be co-captains. Before I give you my impressions of this, I just want to say the captain is retired. He's a former skier and he's retired, but the other co-captains will be a part of these games. Is there anything that comes to your mind of a concern before I give you mine? Let's start with Josh on this one.
No, I don't think anything really concerns me about the move. I think what we've seen in the past is that chef de mission tends to be someone who is no longer competing. So they do tend to be at least semi-retired, if not retired from competition. So that portion of it makes sense to me. That seems to be in keeping with the spirit of the chef de mission. The co-captains, so to speak, is an interesting idea. It will be interesting to see how it works out. I would like to have seen, I think, 1 or 2 people similar to what we've had in the past, just because I think that one of the ideas with the chef de mission is that they're sort of a more experienced person who's been there and done it and can mentor the athletes or help the athletes through what they might be feeling or experiencing at the games. But perhaps this games is an example of something where that's not feasible. So we'll see how this works.
Yeah, I agree with Josh. I don't have any glaring concerns about it. I think this is also reflecting, and I think we're going to talk on this on our next talking point of kind of the distance of events between each other. So I think this is kind of mirrors that, where there is kind of that main retired athlete that I think, like Karen put it, is just more responsible for the logistical and kind of like putting out fires if they come up and any concerns, whereas the co-captains, who are the athletes that will be competing, is more of a mascot-y-esque role where you're keeping the team vibe cheery and rah and making sure that people are connected and meeting each other. That's what we love about the Athletes Village itself is athletes meeting each other from other sports and growing those relationships and keeping the energy high through that. So I think that is what I got from it. That's kind of the role of the co-captains. And I think from my experience, I think each sport already has those athletes kind of in place anyway, and they under kind of like team athlete rep roles. Those are already the people that are used to being the ones that like media is coming to talk to, and they're kind of the point person for that sport anyway. And I think when you look at an example like Tyler McGregor, he's very comfortable and used to being the one that's always in front of the mic and the camera and being in that role. So I don't think it's going to distract or kind of be a drastic change for anybody, but I think it has a big impact. And I think they went along with this again because of the distance in where events are and the disbursement of athletes and teams.
Sometimes when I'm doing this show, I want to go first and put my thoughts in things like this. But on a situation like this, I kind of wanted to feel out what you guys said before I came out and said mine. And I'm still going to tell you what mine was originally before you guys spoke. But I can honestly say that you both combined sort of made me lean into the middle of this. Before this conversation, I was very concerned about this idea of like co-captains. Like, okay, but you're asking them to do more, maybe, and you're also then asking them to compete. And that's why I put the question directly to Karen, and I was like, do you not have concerns that this is a distraction? And she very clearly, as you just heard, said, nah, we debated it with our teams and with our situation, but we really feel that it's more of a, as Claire put it, a cheerleading, rah sort of leading your own group. And I think this is done by design. They've kind of, based on what I can read, they've kind of put people who are already in the captaincy role of their team. So it is people that are in the leadership role. When we come back in the new year, we're going to have Marcoux joining us in an interview. I'm going to sit down with him just before the holidays get going, and I'm going to put some of these questions to him. It was interesting that I put some of them to Karen, but I would be curious his reaction as somebody who's inside of it. And again, I do understand the whole, we had to divide the operations piece. You couldn't expect the chef de mission to do the operations and then do the going to events and this, that, and everything else. It's too difficult to do that. And especially with our next topic coming. I get it now, but I do have concerns over, are you putting too much on these athletes? But I'm leaning more towards Josh. I don't think so, and maybe I kind of overreacted to this when we first did the interview.
I don't know that you've necessarily overreacted. I think your reaction is genuine and very thoughtful as a former Paralympian, because you've had experience with the chef de mission and what they do, whereas I certainly have not. I don't know whether Claire has or not. I'm not going to speak for her, but I think from what I'm hearing from you, maybe would it have made more sense to you to have maybe a retired athlete from that sport as the co-captain, like say a Billy Bridges for hockey, or a retired skier, or what have you? Would that have made a difference, because then you're not affecting someone who's currently on the team. Now, maybe that would mess with the vibes of the team because they're not active with the team. I don't know, but just from listening to what you were saying, I wondered about that as an option.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like, if money was no option, and this is why I'm bringing up the if money was no option. Yeah, I think having the retired athletes from each sport, if you said, 4 years out, we're going to use Billy Bridges for this sport, we're going to use this one for that sport, we're going to yeah, okay, you could do that. The problem is CPC wants these people on site, and money matters. And I think if you had athletes who were coming in and having to be paid and all this to be there, I don't know that the Canadian Paralympic Committee has the money. So in essence, if we're looking at dollars and cents, and I can hear Cameron in my head going, it's all about the mighty dollar. And he's right. It is all about the mighty dollar. And I think that's why, Claire, in this instance, we've gone to let's use the athletes in the way that we see fit. Although I did hear from Karen, yeah, we did understand and talk about this as a leadership group, and we know we had to do this in a tasteful manner in order to pull it off.
That's the dream world that all para athletes dream of, right? When like money is of no object and we can just do what we want. And yeah, of course, if we could kind of expand our reach and have more household faces that we've seen in the past in those positions, of course, that would be great. And I think that it's always a great opportunity to connect current athletes with historically former athletes. I hope to see. So they're obviously trying different things with this as well. So it's who knows what could be different or what they could tap into in the near future, in the next cycle. Or it's exciting that they're at least playing around with this and seeing what fits, what works, what doesn't.
Yeah. I mean, I think by design, I had to ask the question, but by design, she wasn't going to tell me whether they were going to commit to this for the summer games. This is let's see how this goes. They felt that the chef de mission was taking on too much of the operations and not able to do what they wanted them to do. So this is the next best situation. I'd be curious to see whether they do this in the summer, because as she mentioned, you're talking about 3 times the amount of people and athletes and coaches and all this that are going in the summer games. So very fascinating to see what she comes up with for 2028 and even 2027 Para-Pan American Games. I want to get through these last 2 topics as best as we can, and I know the 4th one is probably going to cause a little bit of a discussion. But she did mention that some of these events are hours away from the central situation of the Paralympic Games. Do you feel that negates the Paralympic feel, because essentially you have to stick to your own sport? And I'm going to weigh in on this one first, and I'm going to say, yeah, to me, no matter how much they try to replicate these satellite villages, I think one of the great takeaways of the Paralympic Games is such that you get to be this, part of this bigger mission of all the athletes around. So yes, and I trust the fact that Karen and her team are going to try to make, satellite villages of importance, but they just can't replicate that in the same way. And so unfortunately, yes, I do think that this negates that feel of like all for one, we're all pulling for Team Canada, because it's got to feel like, okay, we're doing this by sport, and all para sports especially feel the way of like when you go to world championships, no one cares unless it's, a big event. But at the Paralympic Games, it's a big deal. Claire, let's start with you. What are your thoughts on the hours away for some of these events?
I think, it's unfortunate. Of course, like you said, I personally have never been to the Paralympic Games. But from the outside in, of course, you would want to be all in the same space, cohabitating and being able to experience each other's sports. I think that when you look at a Winter Games landscape, it's a lot harder to navigate that just geographically with what you have to have for specific sports like downhill skiing and Nordic, and like you have to be on a mountain. That's just, there's no way around that. So when you get to a place like we are going in the new year for the 2026 games, it's unfortunate, but it's kind of what the hand you're dealt when it comes to winter sports, I think. I think this is a little bit off topic, but I think as we go further and with the climate that we're experiencing as well, I think that's going to be harder to navigate as well when the amount of spaces that you actually have available for winter sports is decreasing.
Yeah, that's a point I hadn't personally considered, but it makes a lot of sense. I'm not concerned about the quality of the games necessarily, because Milan is a beautiful city from what I'm told, and obviously Cortina d'Ampezzo is world renowned for its skiing. So the venues themselves, with the exception of possibly the hockey arena, which we've all read those stories, is probably going to be world class. I don't think there's any issues there. I do agree, though, that it's unfortunate that this is not able to be held in a tighter radius, let's say, because you're always going to have some travel with a Paralympic Games to get to different venues. But as Brock mentioned, you really do take away from the all for one for all kind of mentality, because you don't have hockey players able to go and watch skiing. You don't have skiers able to go and watch hockey or any other winter sport. And that's part of the allure, I think, and part of the memories of a Paralympic Games is, well, I play this sport, but I got a chance to go and watch this one, and it was really cool, and it was so much fun to be able to cheer with the team on, and I made so many new friends because we're all in one place. And you're just not going to have that with this. It's going to be more like a world championship where, sure, you're going to see all of the people that you've forged relationships with in the hockey world, for example, but you're not going to see the cross sport connections and friendships that are made, from what I can tell.
And it almost brings us back to the pandemic sort of games. Like, I know they canceled the ones in 2020, and then we did them in 21, but they were still labeled as 2020, and there was still restrictions. And this one sort of brings me back into that realm of like, people were like, oh, it feels like a world championships, and it feels that way. And Josh, you are absolutely correct. The memories that I take away from the Paralympics beyond my own and competitive level is, I got to, be at the pool when 3 Canadian swimmers were gold, silver, and bronze, and I cried like a 2-month-old baby when the national anthem was being played, and I didn't win the medal, but I'm still feeling it, and you just won't get that in this case. And I think that that's part of the, excitement of the Paralympic Games. But again, as Claire pointed out, you can't, you might be able to manufacture snow for that mountain, but you ain't going to be able to manufacture the mountain in a geographical spot that works for everybody and everybody's happy and we can all sing Kumbaya and it's all good. It's not possible to do that. Last topic for 2025 for us is one that we've kind of kicked around for a few weeks now as different things have come to light. And one of those things is that Penny Oleksiak sat down with friend of the show, Devin Héroux from CBC, and she had her first sit down, opened up kind of to Devin. What do you guys make of the interview? If you haven't seen the whole thing, the snippets, whatever you've made of this, does your mind change from when we originally sort of brought this up a number of weeks ago? Josh, I'll start with you on this one.
I'll be honest, I haven't seen the interview per se. I've just seen the snippets. But really, I didn't hear anything that really changed my mind about things. I still wonder if there's a mental health aspect to this and a feeling of, well, everybody's talking about summer now, and so nobody cares about me. I can fade into the background or whatever the case may be. I think she was very measured in what she had to say. I think that that's understandable because you're not going to tell all in a situation like that. But I didn't hear anything that really surprised me. I didn't hear anything that really made me think any differently. I think there are things going on behind the scenes that we're not going to be privy to. And I think ultimately she made a decision not to update her whereabouts, and it's now costing her.
Yeah, my mind hasn't changed. I still see her as, one, she's a Canadian athlete. And I think Canada, more so than others, truly stand behind their athletes and see the best in them, first and foremost. That hasn't changed for me with regards to her. And I also think we lose sight of the amount of privacy that athletes deserve. I think that we sometimes get in this space of, well, now you're a public figure, so you really have to be really transparent and share all. And some are very comfortable doing that. But I think we really have to respect that when people choose to hold stuff back and keep it to them, that we respect that.
Yep. My mind has not changed. My stance was simple. I do not think that this has to do with drugs. I think this was twofold. I'm with Josh. I still think this was either an oopsie that really cost her, or this is I wanted time away and that's the way it is. However, Devin did give her opportunity when she basically said, they were minor mistakes. I decided to go train in the morning when I was supposed to go train in the afternoon. And then there was a couple of the other two whereabouts she was very, very vague about. And she was like, it was minor and it was this and it, And so for me, it didn't really leave me to the point of like, oh, now I know it's this versus that. She didn't give us any more or any less than what we already believed. And I think if you wanted to clear yourself and sort of say, yeah, in whereabouts miss number 1, this happened, and whereabouts miss number 2, this happened, and whereabouts miss number 3, this happened, because at the end of it, people are going to believe what they're going to believe, regardless of whether you keep it closed or keep it open. But if it were me and I'm sitting across from Devin and it really was a clerical mistake of like this happened, then I'm going to clear it and I'm going to say, this is the way I believe in it. And I didn't see that. So for me, it's still not a question of was she on drugs? I never think that that's what it was about. But I do now more lean with my post in the ground that says, I think there was more to this than meets the eye, because she's not like she's saying, oh, I'm gonna retire and I'm gonna walk away and that's it. She says no, she wants to compete still. I think the jarring thing was that for me, when the coaches on the national were interviewed and you know, one of them very much defended the fact that I think Penny needs someone to take care of these clerical things. And my reaction to that's kind of harsh maybe, and I want both of you to quickly respond to this. My reaction to this is harsh in the sense that as an athlete, you have to be responsible for you. And if you decide to go train in the morning and you're supposed to train in the afternoon, you better pray that they don't come. And the fact that they did, it cost you. And so for the coach to defend and say, oh, well, you know, maybe somebody needs to take it over for Penny, I think you still have to wear it as an athlete. Claire, I'll give you the final thoughts for this show and this sort of thought, and then we'll go over to Josh and close the show.
Yes. I mean, athletes at the national level, we know the amount of formats that we have to go through and learning modules to really get on a good habit to keep up with these kinds of things. Everyone's different, though. I know a handful of teammates and athletes throughout my time that keeping up that kind of stuff is something that they really struggle with. So it's, if you need extra help being reminded of those things, that's, I think, one, an easy fix when you're honest about it. But also she's also 25 years old. She's still growing, one, not only as an athlete, but as a human being as well. So it's a good learning experience when it comes down to it, in my mind. Nothing major has happened. You know what I mean? It's nothing to sound the alarms on.
Yeah, I would agree. And to be clear about our earlier topic, I don't think she's done anything morally reprehensible or illegal. I think she just didn't update her whereabouts. Now, I've never had to do it. I don't know how complicated it is. It doesn't sound like something that should be overly complicated to me. It sounds like it's a matter of logging onto an app or a website and saying, oh, I'm training in the morning now instead of the afternoon. Here's where you find me. So to hear that she may need an assistant, for lack of a better term, to do these things for her doesn't make sense to me. Everyone who goes into that stream of competition knows that these things have to be done. If I liken it back to my own experience, I work as an insurance broker's assistant. I have an insurance broker's license because I have to have it for work. There are continuing education things and renewal things that I have to do every single year. And it's on me to get those 8 hours of continuing ed. If I don't do it, I don't get my license. I don't get to keep my job. If you're a professional, not a professional, but if you're a Paralympic or Olympic athlete, there are certain things you have to do as part of safe sport and clean sport. You just have to do them. So put them in a calendar and stick to your calendar. It's to me, it's really that simple.
Yeah, I was a little offended, to be honest, about the whole idea of, maybe Penny, needs an assistant and that those things would be taken care of and the clerical error wouldn't have happened. And it's like, yeah, okay, but you also need to be more mature than the average, 25-year-old, because you've been told about this for decades and decades of your life. And for me, and this is why I've been so passionate about this whole thing, I lived this life. I lived it for 8 years, 2 Paralympic cycles. It falls on you. The buck stops with you, and if you're gonna need an assistant, fine, but I better not hear you say, well, my assistant forgot to plug it in, because you're putting yourself in that shoes. The buck ultimately stops with you, and I just think that Penny realizes that she made a mistake, and that's why she's accepted the ban, and we won't hear from Penny. She's going to be training in public pools, which I know as a high-level athlete, am I going to have the drive to compete as much when I don't have coaches, when I'm swimming alongside Susan, who's exercising because she needs to? Am I going to have the same motivation? I don't know. We'll see. But I do believe we will see Penny in 2027 competing for a spot for 2028. And I would be shocked if she doesn't get a spot. I just think from here on out, you won't hear from Penny, and you won't hear us talk about it anymore until she comes back and makes the Olympic team, because that's really what it is. We've spent a lot of time talking about it, and there's nothing more to be said. She'll just go away for a while and do what she needs to do, and that's it. Speaking of going away for a while, that's the end of our episode for this last iteration of 2025. We will be back with a new episode on Tuesday, January the 6th. We will have Mark Marcoux, who is one of the captains and co-captains for the Canadian Paralympic team. It's going to be a really great conversation. Until then, be safe, be well, and we'll be back on January the 6th, 2026.